Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for 8 Duke New York Career Conversations. I'm Leanne O, class of 2015 and graduate school 2017, and also Duke New York board member. Today, we're really lucky to have our 8th speaker, and we're incredibly privileged to have you, Sanyin, here today. Sanyin, you are a true Blue Devil. You received your undergraduate degree from Pratt, MBA from Fuqua, and now you're a founding executive director of the Coach K Center on the Leadership and Ethics at Fuqua, and also professor at Pratt. Thank you so much for having us today.
It's such a joy to be here. And when I say I bleed Duke blue, I mean literally, because my husband and I met my senior year at Duke, and he was in his first year at Med. And I would say that he is perfect in every way, except he also bleeds a little cardinal because he didn't go to Duke undergrad, but that's okay. No man is perfect, I like to say.
Yeah, but we'd like to first start off by hearing about your forever Duke journey. Like you just said, you do bleed blue. Like, how did you go from being from Pratt, a biomedical engineer, to doing what you're doing now?
So it's an unusual journey because when I first came into Duke, I had this vision that I had my life planned out. I had my life planned out ever since I was a freshman in high school. Since I was in middle school, I was going to go to a great university, and then from there go to medical school and be a doctor, without really understanding what it means to be a physician, except I knew part of my family's values was to be able to help people. And I thought that was really the only path. And in my undergraduate years, made a hard pivot and ended up not going to medical school, nor even applying for medical school. But I thought, gosh, what am I going to do now? What if maybe I go work in the lab sciences? And still very much scientifically minded. And on that year, the first year after graduation, I went to Honduras on a medical missions trip. Duke had this medical missions trip that at that time had gone every year. And there I started, in that 1 week, we were in the mountainous regions of Honduras. I started becoming fascinated by the power dynamics between physicians and patients, because there we were so reliant also on the villagers for our safety, that the power dynamics were more equal. And so that's my first, that was when I started looking into the field of biomedical ethics, and ended up in DC for 5 years, working on issues at the intersection of science, ethics, policy, and law. And at that time, I thought, all right, so maybe I'll go to law school. And was all getting ready to go to law school when a chance conversation on a bus with a stranger, that stranger asked me, what do I want to do with my life? I said, I want to make things happen and I want to help people. It's like, well, if you want to make things happen, don't go to law school. Lawyers will figure out all the reasons why you shouldn't do something. Wait, are there any law grads here? Okay, well there's also very entrepreneurial
okay.
law grads, right? But basically, law is about understanding risks. And if you want to understand how to move forward on things, then go to business school. And so the only business school, the only one I looked at was the Fuqua School of Business at Duke University. And at that time, they had a program where you had 100 students representing 21 different countries. It's modeled after the Global Executive MBA program. It's now merged with the Global Executive MBA program. And there I learned how to build quick trust with face-to-face meetings that then we're able to sustain virtually over the next 7 weeks. And little did I realize how vital that skill set that was built back in between 1999 and 2001, how vital that skill set is to what we're experiencing right now, which is all the trust building via remote. And then fast forward, after graduation, there was an opening for a managing director for the Customer Relationship Management Center at Fuqua. And I was the deputy dean of the school at that time, Rick Stalin, who was also the faculty director of the center, asked if I would be interested. And I became the director of the center. And then a year later, when there was talk about starting up a Coach K Center on Leadership and Ethics, I thought, gosh, the ethics part, that's what I was working on. This sounds so interesting and so exciting. So let me go and be a part of that. Now, I have to say, on the Coach K part, I told him at that time, when I first came to Duke in 92, I thought we had 3 basketball players, Krzyzewski, Krzyzewski, and Coach K. Took me a year to realize all the same person. But you know what? It's a lifelong learning journey. And so now sports industry is a big part of, it's something I'm passionate about, and learning also from sports as a laboratory of leadership is also something I'm passionate about. And so that's my Duke journey in 20 some years worth. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and for those who may not know, like, what is it at what does the Cole Center do, and what do you exactly do there?
All right, so we started up the Leadership Center in 2004. At that time, we know that as an educational institution, you've heard President Price now talk about knowledge in the service of society. So that right now I'm laughing because Marcia Rothschild, my classmate from CCMBA, she was like, oh, thanks for reminding me of how much older we are. Marcia, we're young. It's great to see you too. So in 2003, 2004, we know as an educational institution that we have to prepare business students to be the type of leaders the society needs. Business is a driver of society, so it's not just about, we have a responsibility, not just about helping them understand the marketing, the accounting, the core aspects of business, but we also have to enable them and empower them to be great collaborative leaders who can really make a difference in the world. And so we started off with, we have a touch point with every single MBA daytime student. Through our co-leadership fellows, we train up about 50 second-year MBA students to serve as leaders, coaches, facilitators for all the first-year MBA team members. And then we realize, wait a minute, we're in the knowledge and people development business, so we need to go talk to our customers. That's the leaders in the world outside who are hiring our graduates. So we started convening these think tanks of leaders across public, private, social sectors to understand what's leadership, what type of leadership challenges are coming up next, what are the new leadership trends, because the context is always shifting. And as a result, we discovered in these convenings that no one person has the answers, because we're facing challenges that our predecessors had never really encountered. And it's a completely different world. So we are all adapting and evolving. So these groups became a way for leaders to learn, share, and connect. Then we take the insights, we fuse them back into the student leader development experience. And then we also share them out on LinkedIn, in articles, and so that they can have broader impact on the world at large.
So you work and you train with a lot of leaders. Like, in your opinion, like, is there a secret sauce or kind of equation to making a good leader, especially at times right now where a lot of things are going on in the world, where there's a lot of pressure in terms of being a leader? And I think being a talented and good leader has so many definitions. For you, what does it mean to be a good leader?
So there is no one set leadership style. I've seen leaders who are effective, great leaders who are introverts. I've seen effective, great leaders who are extroverts. I'm 5'1" 3/4". I've also met leaders who are over 6 feet tall, right? There is no one leadership style, and it's also so contextually dependent, right? So a strength in one context may be a detractor in another. So but the patterns of consistency for the type of leaders, behaviors that I'm seeing work that's needed right now. One is this idea of showing up as a human being first, before showing up as a business leader. I mean, the last few months have taught us, like, we're seeing, you're in my home right now, right? And if your screens were all on, I would probably see puppy dogs and kids, and one of my children will probably come in and ask me for food in like halfway through our conversation here. And so we're seeing each other more as human beings. And I think leaders, because of that, we all crave that more. And we all crave to be seen in our whole selves. So that goes for leaders too. Leaders being able to show up as human beings first before showing up as business executives. So that's one. The second is this idea of the leader's role as defining the why we're doing something and also articulating the goals with clarity, the goals that we're going after, but then empowering everyone to be able to, once you have clarity around those two things, the why and the what, then to empower the how across the board so that people know how to enact those in their own way. And sometimes, I mean, we want people's imaginations, we want people's problem solving skills, and there's no one set way of doing things. And so empowering that. Third thing is a deep sense of humility. And humility meaning it's connected with curiosity of wanting to understand and wanting to learn and listen and process. So great leaders also ask a lot of questions. Shally Lazarus, who is the former CEO of Ogilvy and Mather, and she's on the Blackstone board and several remarkable boards. She's a legend. Something I learned from her is the questions that you ask can reveal more about who you are than the answers that you give, right? And so this idea of leaning in on questions. And then the last thing I think about is just idea of self-awareness. How well do you know yourself? And I, and I know we're talking about how we thrive. How do we move forward in times of uncertainty? What a remarkable opportunity. Like we are encountering so many things that we've never encountered before. It's like we're going through the 1918 Spanish flu, the 1929 Great Depression, and the 1960s social uprising, all at the same time, at this moment in time. And all of us are experiencing loss of different sorts and emotions that we haven't yet named. And all of this, are challenges, but we can flip them, we can flip around and say there are also incredible opportunities to, understand how we're reacting, understand who we are, what environment brings out the best in us. Maybe we're discovering we're braver than we realized, right? Or we're discovering, hey, something that was the strength may not be as much a strength as we thought, but here's a new strength that we're discovering. And so I think this is also, these past few weeks and the next few months going off forward will be an incredible opportunity to discover ourselves so that we can understand how we add what our values are and what we value so that we can know best how to add value to the world so that we can lead a more meaningful and more fulfilled life. And isn't that what we all desire? Is that meaningful and fulfilled life?
No, thank you so much for sharing that. I think I was actually reading your article on imposter syndrome. And one of the lines I really loved that you wrote was like, what if we cease to define ourselves by our failures or our success? Instead, what if we choose to define ourselves by our values? And just kind of touching on that, I would love to hear from you, like, what are your values and when did you realize those were actually the values that you wanted to live by?
So that's a really great question. I think with values, my values are collaboration, generosity. Like I believe we don't achieve anything by ourselves, right? It might be on paper, ours might be the name on it, but we all arrive where we are because of how much others have invested in us. It could be mentors, it could be parents, it could be friends, it could, it's just, there's so much, we don't get where we are by ourselves. We also, and that's just acknowledge that. And so a recognition of that. And then conversely, then we have a responsibility to invest in other people's successes. So that's another value, right? This idea of generosity. I really believe that generosity always, it leads to great things, right? But there's a psychological reward from generosity, but we also learn so much through that engagement. Like when we mentor someone else, actually we're being mentored because every mentoring relationship it's a co-mentoring relationship. So collaboration, generosity, integrity, doing the right thing, even when it's hard. And I think this is something, I'll admit, doing the right thing can be hard, and so in those moments, what do we do? And that's when we need others around us. Very much believe in the power of friendships to shape our character. We're shaped by the friendships that we keep. And so keep good friends, right? And by good friends, people whose values we can see, hey, that person, that's someone who has the type of values they live their life out in those values. And when you're around that person, then it's easier to hold each other accountable. In leadership terms, in organizations, that's culture. That's culture. Yeah, and how do we discover those? So my friend Aisha Brazil, who wrote the book, Design the Life That You Love, she has this exercise where she would ask you, who are your superheroes? Like in the moment. And I remember I have written down, for example, Frances Hesselbein, and she's like, why is that person your superhero? And I said, well, because Frances, her quote is, be an opener of doors for others. And she's always optimistic, and she sees the opportunities and challenges. And Aisha said, well, guess what? What you see in her, in your superhero, in your mentor, someone you admire, those are the things that you value, because we see what we value, right? So that's a good exercise. If you want to understand what you value, go two things. One is go home tonight, list out who are the top 3 people you admire right now, and why do you admire them, right? So if you say Steve Jobs, like some people might say, oh, Steve Jobs because he's so brilliant. Another person might say Steve Jobs because he's a game-changing innovator who's not afraid to go against the status quo. That's 2 different sides of Steve Jobs, but what you see, that's what you value. Right? So that's one exercise. And then the other exercise is to we don't see ourselves clearly. And so just ask your friends, and that's a way of discovering your superpowers too. Ask your friends, what do you think my values are? That might be an interesting exercise, and see and listen to what they say. You might discover something about yourself, because we might say our value is one thing, but then how we enact, it might be something else that's a priority, and that's not, it might be another value. But wouldn't it be nice to have that clarity?
No, thank you so much for sharing. I think we're going to go to our second portion where we're going to do Q&A. We'd like to encourage everybody to turn on your video so that Sanyin can see you, and vice versa. And please send questions in. I know we got a couple through email, so I'm going to just start with the first one. Right. And I think this may resonate a lot to people here who are mothers. So how has being a mother affected how you advise CEOs?
Oh my gosh. Thank you for asking me that question. It's one of my favorite, because I've been thinking about this a lot. So for those of you who may not know me, I'm a mom to 3 kids, 10, 9, and their ages change on us. So they change on us each year. So it's 10, 9, and 7. That's how old they are. And Philip's laughing. The experience. So one thing I've discovered is I learned just as much about leadership from engagement with my children as I do from different leaders, or even from some of the academic literature out there. And here's what I mean by that. So let's take a common principle. I could say to my children, eat healthy, eat healthy, eat healthy. But say if my dear, wonderful husband who's not here right now, so I can talk about him, and he's not going to watch the video. So that's comes home and he brings like potato chips and chocolate, candy, and puts it all around the kitchen. I can tell my kids, we can both tell our children till we're blue in the face, eat healthy, but what they're surrounded by, their environment is all unhealthy snacks. They're not going to eat healthy, right? And that's a proven behavioral science principle, is environment matters. And so in terms of leadership, what are we putting in the environment for our team members and for ourselves? That's going to remind us of our values and our principles and what we're focused on. So that's one. And then my other favorite one that actually I just recently shared with one of the CEOs I'm advising is, so I can say to my child, don't do this, you'll get hurt. Don't do this, you'll get hurt. And then when they go and do it and fall down the stairs, resist the urge to say, see, I told you so, because that does not help in the moment. And it's about focusing they fall down the stairs, what we can do the debrief later, what's needed in the moment. And it's the same thing in terms of how we interact with each other. The other person is the decision maker of their actions. But when they don't take the advice, that's their decision. And there's consequences, okay. But at that moment, out of love, out of friendship, out of care, it's not saying, I told you so, not helpful. But rather it's, it might be compassion. It might be, how can we help you get up? How can we help make this better? And at the end of the day, people are not going to listen to you until they know that you care, right? It's got showing up as a human being first. And our family members, we have to show that caring first before any advice is going to be taken into consideration. So that's my, I mean, I could talk about parenting insights and how it translates into what I'm seeing in terms of the leadership space, but we can move on to other questions.
No, I mean, just from listening to you and like watching a lot of your interviews, you are such a compassionate, kind person, and that definitely resonates. And it also seems like you've been able to do exactly what you wanted, and it seems like you're doing and pursuing like your goals and your values. Like, how would you advise someone who doesn't feel like it's that easy to just do what they're passionate in or have a value, and may that be like financial issues or just like different roadblocks that happen throughout life?
Leanne, it's what you're seeing on social media and articles are my highlights. In fact, when we're looking on social media, we're seeing each other's highlights, and we're often comparing like our everyday realities, all the ups and downs, to those highlights. I have plenty of lowlights. I can write a book like that's like bigger than this, that's filled with my personal failure stories. The reality is we all struggle. And that's why we have to like be there for each other. But we don't have to struggle alone, right? Like when we invest in people's successes and we cheer them on, we receive that back. They cheer us back on when we're, in our successes, and they cheer us on in our tough times. And so the power of friendships is so important. I mean, friendships have gotten me through so many ups and downs. People who believed in me. I mean, like Coach K, Sim Sitkin, Francis Hasselbein, Greg Jones. I mean, they can tell you about conversations when I was really low, and I just thought, and they were there because they took the time to know my story, and they helped me believe in myself. Right? And I would say that's one of the most powerful things. I mean, look at this Duke community. We're here for each other. We can be here for each other. We all went through the shared experience of Duke, and we know we've all struggled with perfectionism, and we've all struggled with playing our mistakes over and over in our heads. I hope that's not just a me thing, the playing mistakes over and over in my head, I think. And so we have that, and so we already have a starting point of that empathy with one another, right? And so to be able to like like ask for help, to be learning to ask for help, that is one of the hardest things, but it's also going to be one of the most powerful things. And by asking for help, I mean it's not showing up with saying, oh, I remember one of the mistakes I've made early on in seeking out mentors. Like someone would say, okay, sure, we'll engage in a mentoring relationship. And then every conversation I would have, I would just try to show up and show, oh, here's what I've done. That's great. You know, and I would never ask them a question for, here's something I'm struggling with. And I realized then when I started mentoring a lot more people, and when they do that to me, I realized, oh, I'm happy for you, but I don't know how I can help. And it becomes less of an investment because we're like, when we ask people for advice, we're getting them invested in our success, right? So being able to ask for advice and showing we don't have the answers and that's something that has helped me a great deal along the way. So I would say make friends, invest in other people, ask, and then seeking advice out from other people. And the way to think about it is we invest in other people's successes. Why are we being selfish and keeping them away and out of the opportunity to invest in our success? So be vulnerable and seek out help. Those are the two things.
I can't believe we've already spent 27 minutes talking. I feel like the time has just flown by. And I think we have time for maybe one more question. So this is from Phil. He's asking, what do you see as the 2 or 3 most critical things Duke must do to produce leaders that will be relevant as the future shifts so dramatically?
Oh, that is, so I think is this idea of understanding leadership not as position or title, but as behaviors, and understanding that everyone can lead from where they are, right? So that's one. And so the more opportunities that students have to practice that is that, because leadership takes practice. My friend Marshall Goldsmith would say, knowing and thinking is not the same as doing. And boy, is he right. And so it takes practice. And so in engineering classes, we get the chance to practice with our teams. Now, wouldn't it be wonderful if after those, we also get to debrief and learn how to debrief? I mean, at Fuqua, we have team charters. Every single team works through team charters. And then afterwards, there's debrief, because that's the opportunity where you can say, here's what we can replicate, what worked well, that we can keep replicating. And here's what didn't go so well that we can maybe adapt and shift for the future, right? So I would say leadership is behavioral focus, having intentionality around it. So the practice, and then the reflection, and then the practice again, right? That sort of longitudinal type of approach. And then this third thing is collaboration. Duke is one of the most interdisciplinary universities there are. And I mean, oh my gosh, I'm seeing the collaborations between Stanford and Divinity and engineering and Fuqua, and it's awesome, right? And so if we can turn that around and just double down on that type of interdisciplinary collaboration and inclusive collaboration, and help our students, so a student in engineering, I mean, the Bass Connections is an example of that, where you're putting together students from different majors and disciplines. If students can then take ownership of that, and wouldn't it be great for a engineering student to say, you know what, let's play IDEO, right? And pull in an anthropology student to help solve this problem, right? English major to help frame this, and we can learn from each other. I think that would be wonderful. And I think that is already happening. And I think it's just doubling down on our strengths and what is already working.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. I can't believe it's already 30 minutes past. Your time has been incredible, and we're so lucky to have you be a true blue, a Duke blue forever, being in Durham and working at Duke. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you everybody for making time and joining our 8th career conversations today. We've had the privilege of hosting so many wonderful speakers throughout the last 8 weeks, and we're excited to be continuously doing that. We'll just be doing it every other week during the summer, and we look forward to bringing amazing speakers to everybody in the Duke New York community. So thank you, Sanyin, again. Thank you everybody for joining, and have a great rest of the evening.
And can we just give a round of applause to the Duke and New York board members, just for your time in convening this for our community? Just thank you so much. I see Mammy and Dana and Leanne.
Bill.
Let's
and
see.
Bill and Erica.
And Phil, that's right. And Erica. So thank you so much for, I mean, this is wonderful. Thank you for being here and for doing this.
No, thank you. Well, everybody have a great rest of your evening.
All right, bye.
Bye.